And really just to emphasize that the truth does set us free, and it's getting off base from our truth that really messes us up.
Welcome to the Meyer Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meyer Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Hi everyone, Kristin Walker here. We're back with Dr. Lisa Day, who is a registered nurse and psychologist. Hello, Lisa.
Oh, hi, Kristin.
We're going to talk about empaths and the role of boundaries in toxic relationships. This is a good one.
Yeah, this is a fun one, and one that is, present so often to my practice, and what I would add to that, is differentiating, is this love or is it codependence? And it's difficult to differentiate at times. If we think about the role of the empath and how they find themselves with narcissists, which is probably the most toxic combination,
yes.
And yet the most common, it's important to walk through it to differentiate it.
And I love that you acknowledge that as a clinician, because it's so true. I mean, they're like moths to a flame, but it's really more that you, the empath, are the flame, and the narcissist is the moth, because they're coming to you to get your goods.
Well, absolutely. And well, they see it and they want it, and they'll come straight to it. And the thing is, with many empaths, is they'll repeat this pattern over and over and over. And what we'll talk about in here at some point in time is the different forms, that narcissists can present as, so that we have great clarity. I tell folks, you want to learn how to identify a narcissist just as you would a Dalmatian dog. Oh, yes. There's a Dalmatian. Oh, there's a narcissist. Warning, warning, warning.
Yeah, warning for you especially. Yeah, and it's not, we've done a lot of shows about narcissism on other podcasts, and empaths go down a very difficult road when it comes to narcissists in their life. And you can have a stage of healing be that you just kind of demonize people that have narcissistic personality disorder on up the scale to psychopathy. And that's a necessary stage for some people. It was for me. And now I'm more of in okay, I understand this person also has pain. Not, someone who has narcissistic personality disorder suffers also. And so I don't feel the need to demonize them, but I also don't have any in my life. So, and I used to be surrounded. So it's a lot easier for me to be like, okay, I can have compassion now.
Well, you can have compassion now, but what's interesting, or what I see, is that, with an empath, when they go through that process of realizing that they have been with one or if several empaths, oftentimes, that pendulum can swing very drastic to the other side, and they decide that relationships aren't for them, because they've been involved with so many narcissists that present in so many different ways, that they just conclude that I don't do well in relationships. I do better outside of relationships. And, if you think about the typical empath, they're so caring, so compassionate. They have so much love to give, and they look for the best in other people. And many empaths, feel that, well, and I don't know that they just feel it. I think that it's actually true that they're here to help the healing of others. Yes. And then, of course, we've got the narcissist that, yes, they have their traumas and they have their wounds and their ways of operating, but they're not interested in healing. They're interested in someone taking responsibility for their emotions and making it better. And so those two people on the opposite ends of that bell-shaped curve that I often refer to find each other, and really can stay together for a long time until the destruction gets pretty profound.
Until you, the empath, have taken on, I call it fleas and ticks.
Oh my God. There's no judgment there.
You literally can take on the personality of this person who is just behaves deplorably. And you can take that on if you don't do what we're going to be talking about in this show, and feel even more like you're crazy and you are the one with the problem and all the things that are getting projected onto you. And it's easier to gaslight you and utilize you, and you attract more narcissists in this vicious cycle. And you can look like you are the one with the problem because you're walking around wearing someone else's clothing, so to speak.
That is really good. No,
that is yucky, toxic behavior, and take space and time away from that person. And, lots of counseling and stuff to find out, who the heck am I actually?
Well, and I think that's oftentimes what's presented to therapy, or at least the baseline when people begin to question the relationship, is when a kind, loving, compassionate, optimistic, joy-filled empath finds themselves with an enamoring, charming, gorgeous, attractive, wow factor narcissist. And it's, it starts off really good. And it starts off that the empath feels really loving because they can love on those broken parts in the narcissist. And then over time, we see how, the control slips in, meaning that the narcissist will do or say things that begins to instill self-doubt. And one of the, recently I was working with a young woman, and she is definitely kind, loving, compassionate, well-known in the community. And she said, Lisa, I began to ask myself, is this relationship bringing out the best in me? Am I a better person? And she said, I have become judgmental and critical. I've become controlling. I've isolated. I've withdrawn. I don't spend time with people. And the real shocker was she had a feeling in her relationship with her narcissist that she was being lied to and things being taken from her, meaning things disappearing from her home, little things. And she said, Lisa, I found myself taking some of his things and putting them away. And in the core of me, I would never do that because I would consider it a lie. She said, but I found myself going, well, I'll take this. Oh, you lost it, honey.
Fleas and ticks, I'm telling you.
Yes. And then, if not caught, unfortunately, if not caught, an empath can find themselves turning into a narcissist, which is, you talk about crazy making. That'll blow you away.
Yep, absolutely. I behaved my worst I've ever behaved in my entire adult life. Who knows how I was when I was 3, but in my entire adult life around a psychopath. And it shocked me, and it made me have to go to therapy again, and do, which I would anyway. But of course, I was the only one that went to therapy. He never did.
Right.
So, and this is someone that people had horrible physical, weird, out of nowhere diseases that are very rare happen to them, and they die around this person. So that's how toxic and whatever. And I behaved awful getting out of that relationship. But it's on another way, we look at this from a Christian perspective, is that it also was a wonderful, amazing blessing. I know that God played a hand in that, bringing that to my life, because it brought me to this amazing awakening and healing of myself. So there's a lot of ways that we can look at these things when we have distance, therapy, and time.
Well, it's interesting though when I listen to you, Kristin, because you say that there was hidden blessings, and Scripture tells us that the truth shall set you free, and in the combination with an empath and what you're referring to, or what I refer to as the malignant narcissist.
Yes.
They're one who they have no regard or interest in what is moral or immoral. They have zero empathy, and these folks can find themselves being in prisons or gangs or drug rehab, but they also can present themselves as CEOs, of top corporations. But tracking that back, what I'm hearing, reading between the lines, is that through that painful process, you got off base with the truth of who you are, but in the healing got back into, and really just to emphasize that the truth does set us free, and it's getting off base from our truth that really messes us up.
I have to say this. It is such a pleasure to do these with you, Dr. Lisa Day, because listeners, I know, this podcast may be new to you, but I do so many shows and have been doing shows with people in this field of mental health for 6 years. And every time I do a show with you, I get a perspective I haven't heard. And I've interviewed the best and the best, New York Times best-selling all over the globe. And I always get a really clear perspective whenever I talk to you.
Thank you, Kristin. Thank you. Well, and I think that, I'd like to point those things out because, when we talk about boundaries essentially are based in the truth in our heart. And one of the things that I teach all the time in my practice and definitely talk a lot about and do speaking engagements with is identifying the truth in our heart and living in a manner consistent with that truth. And when we find ourselves in a codependent relationship, or if we find ourselves saying, is this love or is this codependence? To the extent that we can go in and say, what is my truth? And to what extent am I living in a manner consistent with my truth? Meaning, is my truth that I don't want to come home and cook dinner, or I don't want to do your laundry, or I don't want to take you on vacation, and I'm disregarding that, and I come home and cook when I'm exhausted, or I do your laundry when I think you can do your own laundry, or when I think I want to go spend time with my girlfriends, but I don't because you're going to be upset? Those are just real practical ways that we get off base, from that truth. And it's just cornerstone to the boundaries that we need.
What I love about what you're saying, it's the first time I've been able to hear not giving thanks to the narcissist, the malignant narcissist that was in my life for me having this life-changing moment. Not that I'm a non-thankful person and wouldn't do that, but you said it in such a way that I can understand, okay, I had this awakening. This was about my healing. I don't need to ascribe that this is what we empaths do. We take our goodness and we put it on other people. That's why we get caught up in these relationships. So we treat people as we are inside, which when we're healthy and whatever, it's beautiful and wonderful. And then we put all these on people that don't necessarily deserve to have that level of altruism that we have. And then we can, get ourselves in trouble. But it's really nice to hear you say from that clinical perspective, you don't, as an empath, have to say thank you to the person that you feel like almost broke you. It's about you.
It's about our growth. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. We chose to grow out of it. They didn't. We chose to. We chose not to.
And we chose, though we don't like to think about it, we chose to give them qualities that they don't have.
Yes.
Meaning we believe that they've got a heart like ours. We believe that they have empathy and consideration and are out for the well-being of others, only to find that they're not. And, when I teach about codependency outside even just, empaths, I say we want to be aware of these things. I say we want to be aware of, am I giving this individual qualities that they don't have? 1. Am I disregarding qualities that they do? 2. And here is the big clincher. Am I disregarding my needs and wants as it relates to the relationship? Because if we are doing one or any of those, there's a good chance we are either in or heading to a codependent relationship.
Absolutely. That is absolutely true. And empaths do this. We don't necessarily have to, but anybody can. And narcissists are codependent too. They're codependent on us.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth a few moments, though, Kristin, to talk about the different kinds of narcissists, because we can think about the sociopathic narcissist that you were involved in, and we think Ted Bundy, or we think, oh, well, I would never get involved with someone like that, though we find ourselves knee deep in it. And when we think of narcissism, there are several types. But when you are in the clinical realm, we have narcissistic personality disorder. But when we're talking about the practical, the nuts and bolts of it, we have what some people would call the covert narcissist or the vulnerable narcissist. And they don't look like the person you're describing. They're soft. They tend to be very sensitive and shy. You feel sorry for them. They disguise those feelings of self-hatred and in unworthiness. But as you get to know them, they will emotionally manipulate you like you have never heard. They use the charm, the guilt tripping, and the gaslighting. They just, all of a sudden you feel like, well, this doesn't feel good. This person is wonderful, loving, and kind. But and then we have, the overt narcissist, which you talk about, but other ones that we want to keep aware of. And so I would call the person that you were describing, I would call him the malignant narcissist,
Yes.
the worst kind.
And
he's the
covert as all get out, because he used to talk like this. And I'm just a small boy from a small town, and I just am not very bright. And you just fall for this Johnny Appleseed. Everybody does, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is not Johnny Appleseed.
This is far from it. Corn mash. Yeah. And so we can see that type. And then, the ones that all of us, can spot, or smell, I say, from miles away, is what we would informally, these aren't formal diagnoses either, but it's the elitist. It's the I'm better than all. It's that huge sense of entitlement. I deserve, I'm climbing to the top. I'm so good. They're going to give accolades to themselves. They have a huge inflated sense of self. And so we can see those pretty clearly. And we can see the sociopath narcissist, once we've been intimately involved with one, we can see those pretty clearly. But the ones that we don't always see are informally, two different kinds. We talk about the amorous narcissist, and we talk about the compensatory. And the amorous narcissist, really, some people might also say, is the sex addict. In that, their self-worth and their value comes, from accumulating, if you will. Yeah, conquest, thank you, of sexual or love interactions. But as soon as they accomplish their goal of the self, esteem boost and are bored, they'll drop you, and these people are often, I tell people to be careful, these people are the ones who present as con artists, as gold diggers. Yeah, the heartbreakers. But and then the other kind, which the subtle kind, is just the compensatory, and that's someone who's pretty transparent with their wounds of childhood, and they really present themselves as there's no one who can understand the depth of my pain. There's no one who can understand the magnitude of my abuse, and there's no one, which to an empath, we're like, oh, I get it. Oh, I'm right here with you. And so again, it pulls us in, only to find that they're going to use us as a way to meet all of their needs of, they're the greatest person. We understand that they had the worst pain. No one's ever had pain like you. Let me do everything I can do to take care of you. Right?
Yes, exactly. So, let me swallow all of your pain and shame and rage and horror, and I'll carry it for you like Sisyphus and the rock up the hill, and the rock's going to come down again, because that is life with a narcissist.
Well, and you'll find yourself defending them. Well, he has 3 DUIs and 2 DV charges, domestic violence charges, but it was those women that he was involved with. They made him drink and hit them, and unfortunately, if we don't have those boundaries, we begin to believe our own lies, which is characteristic of a narcissist. And, I always tell folks, it's important to realize, empaths are natural healers, but we have to realize that we can never heal a narcissist. We really can't. Any form of healing has to be originated by them. But where they hook us in is they say, help me with this. I'm not able to maintain a job. He's 45 years old and has never been in a job for more than 4 months. And, the empath is going to make that resume, is going to get him some contacts, only to find that a year later, he still hasn't had a job for more than 4 months.
Right.
So, it's important to look at where we get pulled in.
Yes.
But,
yes. And also that natural tendency of not wanting to be wrong.
As an empath?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to be wrong. What does that say about me? There's so much healing behind that comes after these relationships that's available to you, and it's awfully scary. Sometimes the codependency takes over and you bury yourself in that because of your own fears about your own healing, because it's so much easier to go and play martyr and rescue to someone who is unhealable, to try to heal the unhealable, than it is to look at your stuff.
Well, and you can get caught in that denial, that he can't possibly be like this.
Yes.
I must be doing something wrong, and we don't want to believe that he cheated on us, or that he lies on his taxes, or that he steals, from the company he works in, and it has no remorse. We think it can't possibly so. What do I need to do to convince him or to change him? We're invested in his health. But he has no interest in ours. I mean, when you find, I don't know if you've experienced this yourself, but in these dynamics, which I believe are the most toxic, dynamics, when it's typically the empath that comes to a place where they're realizing they're not operating in a manner consistent with the truth in their heart. They've given these people qualities they don't have, and they've become someone they don't like in themselves. The codependent, may take the step of saying, I use this formal phrase, I teach this to my clients, who you are and how you operate is inconsistent with what I value in my close personal relationships.
I love it.
Well, it sounds so clinical, but to the extent that we defend or explain to the narcissist, they're going to challenge it. But tracking that back, the codependent enters into months, if not years of healing. The narcissist moves on.
Yes.
And that's hard. That's a hard part.
And you are usually washed up, tired, overweight, or too skinny. Your skin looks awful. It's like you've been attached to a succubus. They look great. You are just dried up and have nothing left.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meyer of the Meyer Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meyer Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
Well, and it capitalizes on the insecurities of the empath that, they replace you relatively quickly.
Yes.
And then you, as an empath, was I not worth anything? Did I not love well enough? Was I too selfish? I wanted to go visit my family alone. Was that unkind? It causes a tremendous amount of self-doubt. But as you pointed out, also the opportunity for growth, the opportunity for healing. And so, if we look at the qualities, of empaths of being so very sensitive, and being gaslighted, by a narcissist, it's so very important when we think about the development of boundaries that, as I mentioned a few moments ago, that the empath learn. I think the single most important thing that we can learn is to identify, and I say in all that you do, I teach folks to identify the truth in your heart. In all that you do, identify the truth in your heart. I say right or wrong, good or bad. Now, we may not always act out of the truth, but the best thing we can do to defend ourselves against codependent relationships is to be in tune with that. Meaning, do I feel like going away this weekend? Do I not feel like going away this weekend? Do I feel like spending time with you? Do I not feel like spending time with you? Do I feel like taking a phone call at 10 o'clock? Or am I afraid you're going to be upset and accuse me of cheating if I don't? What is my truth, and how can I honor that? And when you are very sensitive and you're gaslighted, that really causes you to question all of those truths, to get off base.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the added bonus, air quotes, of not only are you taking on some behaviors, you're feeling what they're feeling, which is,
true.
Which can be very shady. You are used to being this caring, really compassionate, giving person, and all, over the course of time in the relationship, you start feeling hateful. You start hating people that you've never met. You start feeling what they feel, and it's awful. I can tell you, it takes a long time to wind yourself out of that. And I spent many years just trying to prove that I was actually a good person because I wore that stuff, because I did not know about boundaries. And I think we need to talk about like those tangible boundaries where the word no comes out of your mouth, and
Absolutely.
also the intangible boundaries where your energy says no.
Well, and I think that, what you're pointing to, which is really important, is that I say that the most basic boundary is that of geographical space and time. So when we realize that we're in a toxic codependent relationship, how do we establish that? And what confounds that, makes it more difficult, is narcissists are brilliant. And they do, Pia Mellody refers to this as bombing. Bombing, love bombing, yeah. And so when you're trying to establish this geographical space and time, you might be bombed with, I'm so sorry. This is from the narcissist. I'm so sorry. I've hurt you. I've let you down. I do want to grow. I do want to become the person that you need me to be. And it taps into all of our, empathy, right? Or if that doesn't work, a few days later, you might get I can't believe my ex-wife, they've moved into a house that's not built, and they have my son there and they have no heat, right? Oh, you're going to come in and for the empathy of the son. Or
yes.
The next bomb may be, I don't know what's wrong with me. I've been vomiting for 48 hours. I'm dizzy and can't get up. And it's very difficult to hold that basic boundary of geographical space and time when you're love bombed.
Good point. Absolutely. And you need it. Boy, do you need this. You absolutely must have that if you're an empath. I think that some people that aren't as sensitive are able to, maybe live with a narcissist, and I'm not talking, they can live with it longer and set up a plan to get away and all those things, because they still, if it's someone who's malignant, they still have to get the heck out of there. But if you're an empath, I mean, for me, it would be impossible to live in the same space. It would be impossible.
Absolutely.
Eventually, I would start wearing the coat of many colors.
Or you might become homicidal.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and so, if we start with that basic boundary of geographical space and time, and then that awareness of the love bombing, then we look at what are the boundaries that I'm having with self, meaning really having clarity that we are not responsible for someone else's destructive behavior.
Yeah.
That we are not responsible, and we have to have that clear. And sometimes, the boundary just really is going to be something we hold in our mind. Just, okay, I need to remind myself I'm not responsible for the fact that he lost his job. I'm not responsible for the fact that he didn't pay his ticket and, has now got a warrant out for his arrest or something like that. And, with those boundaries, we can show compassion, but also maintain that sense of boundaries, meaning a phrase that I teach with regard to boundaries is that the goal of relationship is connection and comfort, not fix and repair.
Yeah.
So as codependents, especially if we're empaths in a codependent toxic relationship, we feel great to jump in and fix and repair. We love doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That feels good. And we just have to be, aware of that.
Yeah. And then you get to a place where it doesn't feel good, thank goodness, and you don't do it anymore. I mean, I'm there for my friends that have issues. It's not like that. I don't get bedazzled by narcissists. And I used to. Oh my gosh, the most Charlie Brown looking human being I could put so many great qualities onto that person that all of a sudden he absolutely looks like a movie star. And then with time, I'm not kidding. Like, just see him walking down the street and it's like the sun is shining and there's a halo around, that I can do that. I did do that. No, never anymore. I do not do that. But you can do that. And then when you get that time and the distance and the therapy and the boundaries and all these things that you do, and you go back and you look at some of these people that you put in movie star status, and not to put anyone down and objectify people, but you do kind of go, what on earth did I think was so attractive about this person? And it's shocking.
Well, and two, in developing those boundaries, and we have talked about this in prior shows, is that sometimes we give Charlie Brown, I think Charlie Brown's cute, by the way, those qualities because we need them to have those qualities, because we're trying to fix what went wrong in our childhood, or we're trying to repair the trauma that we've not quite resolved. And so, as we're developing boundaries as a recovering codependent, and as we're focusing on self-care, we want to look at what is my unresolved that's pulling me into these severely, oftentimes abusive, toxic relationships.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, we have the physical boundary that you talked about, geographical and all of that. Those things that empaths and anyone can do where you just energetically have a boundary, and how you because sometimes you don't even know where you begin. You've been so enmeshed with people your whole life that you don't even know what a boundary is. You know that, okay, if someone is across the street and there's a fence in between you, that's a boundary. A narcissist is going to be like a bull and come through the fence every single time. And you're going to be the good little empath. Yes, exactly. And you're the empath standing there with a red cape going, tackle me. I'll love it. I'll let you be angry with me because you tackled me.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But the ability to figure out inside yourself how to hold an energetic boundary with yourself and with someone else is a different
Sure.
kind of a road.
It is, and I guess I would speak it. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, so I would approach that question from how our thoughts then influence our behaviors and our feelings. And one of the phrases that I use in my own life all the time, and I teach it in my practice, is that we are responsible to, not for, other people. So when I'm finding, that what someone is burdening me to take care of this or to do that for them, or, hey, can you stop by and do this, or can you open me up a P.O. box or what have you, it's that I'm responsible to let you know what I will and will not do. I'm not responsible for doing those things for you. And I think because I'm so very cognitive behavioral, I will always I teach, go to the structure of the thought, and then how do I bring that into my behavior? Follow me?
Yes.
And it may be that we don't say, hey, let me take care of that for you, or let me make that doctor's appointment for you, or let me pay that bill. I know you've been unemployed and sick.
I used to stick Post-it notes on my computer screen because that's where I was looking, for most of my day, saying, don't say yes to this, don't say yes to that, just reminding myself to stop talking and
Absolutely.
say yes to everything.
Well, and to ask yourself, are you saying no as often as you're saying yes?
That's it, yeah.
Are you saying no as often as you're saying yes? And then the other thing, and I'll probably do a whole podcast on this, but this is where we really get hooked in, is we want to be able to differentiate, and narcissists are really good at convincing us otherwise. Are they unable or are they unwilling?
Right.
Are they unable to do this or unwilling? And because we're so willing to help everybody and to solve everybody's problems because it feels good, we often jump into that trap. Oh, I'm happy to do this. But then we realize that it's become codependent when we start becoming resentful or bitter or want to be less than truthful. Oh, I can't make that happen, versus, no, I'm not really interested in it. But I think that, when you think about what are the tangibles, some things to keep in mind, of differentiating, is this a loving relationship or is it a codependent relationship, is that when we are in a loving relationship, there's a tremendous focus on our development, the development of self. Am I on my growth path? Am I taking care of my needs for sleep, exercise, time with friends and family? Is my focus on me versus am I obsessing about the relationship, or am I obsessing about the other person?
Yes.
We really can get caught in that. We want to look at, do I have those separate interests and friends, or do I find that increasingly I'm isolated? Narcissists are really good, and in toxic relationships are really good at strategically isolating you from your passions, your hobbies, your desires, and that may even be getting up and going to yoga.
Yeah, and your other relationships in your life, that all of a sudden people that you've trusted or loved in your life now are you don't want to be around them, but you don't feel like that was really your idea.
There's subtleties. I mean, narcissists, because of their lack of empathy and their self-absorption, really are just focused on their best interest, and that's having you fully attentive to them. Yes. And everything else is perceived as a threat. And we, one of the things that I would also say is that if we find ourselves, typically this is not what you're going to see with an empath, but if you find yourself feeling jealous or possessive, fearful or insecure, that's an indication that you are not operating out of your truth. You're not operating from a place of healthy boundaries.
Yes, and
our self-care.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that, all of us, empaths that get and feel jealous and all those things too. It's just that it took me quite a few relationships to really get it, that when I was in ones where that jealousy component reared its ugly head, which was only a few, I realized, okay, yes, it's within me because I'm feeling it, but I only feel this way with this person.
Absolutely. They provoke the ugliest sides of us. But it's important in that process, Kristin, it's important and actually pretty freeing to see that we do have those ugly sides.
Yeah.
Right. But is it me? Is it me? And one of the things, Meyer clinics, we tend to really attract because of the Christian dynamic of our corporation, a lot of folks who struggle, in 1 Corinthians, we read the descriptors of love, right? We learn that love is patient, it's kind, it does not envy. We can go on to it does not boast, it's not proud, it's not rude, self-seeking, doesn't get angry, doesn't hold a record of wrongs, doesn't delight in evil. It goes on and on and on. Doesn't, rejoices in truth, protects always. These are the clinchers. Always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And while 1 Corinthians is awesome, in my opinion, as a foundation of what love looks like, 1 Corinthians can be a death march, if you will, for a codependent and a toxic relationship, because it causes them to doubt, the truth of what they're feeling. And they continue to disregard self and to remain in the pathology.
In some of these relationships too, you are dealing with God, your beliefs, Jesus being used as a weapon to keep you under control. And that is very, very difficult when your faith is getting attacked and your faith is being used as something that Jesus would have never stood for.
Well, and I refer to that as using the Lord's name in vain. And it's probably one of the most severe forms of spiritual abuse. Yeah. But it can overlap into emotional abuse and mental abuse. Because if you were a Christian and if you knew the love of the Lord, you wouldn't say no to me. You would understand that I'm broken. You would understand that I'm not perfect. So your Jesus obviously is different from my Jesus. My Jesus is a forgiving, loving God. Yours is a judgmental, critical, abandoning God. And now, boy, have I heard it all, and so, when we're setting our boundaries, it's really having clarity on who we are and who we are not, what our feelings are and what our feelings are not. And, when you first fall into a toxic codependent relationship with a narcissist, you're so enamored. I mean, you can probably speak to this, Kristin. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. It's a love like you have never experienced. It's a level of connection like you have never experienced. And that's because that person you're involved with doesn't have healthy separateness. They want power and control, and they have fine-tuned that skill to obtain that power and control. And again, we're going to say it's not that they're necessarily vicious or malicious people. It's their defense mechanisms to avoid, rejection or abandonment. But nevertheless, it's toxic. It doesn't make it okay.
But absolutely.
Yeah. So when we think about, boundaries, sometimes we can think about boundaries as something that we're doing to others. And, when we begin to question if we're in a codependent relationship, some things that we really want to begin to ponder with ourselves, not in discussion with the narcissist or with the toxic relationship, is, do I have and am I bringing into this relationship a solid sense of self? Is my identity here, or am I increasingly losing it? Am I dressing like him? As you said, the proverbial putting the clothes on. Some people find that they weren't a cowboy person at all, and then they're buying some boots, right? Mm-hmm. to please the narcissist. But do both parties have the ability to compromise, or do I feel like I'm, more in the habit of disregarding my truth, disregarding my needs and wants? If I want to go ski, but you don't like to ski, and I say, okay, well, I don't really need to go to ski. It's more enjoyable to spend time with you, and you feel like that is love. Again, I touched upon this just a few moments ago. Do I have appropriate levels of trust, or is my gut telling me this person's lying to me? This person's not faithful to me. I had a client who, a wonderful woman who showed up with chlamydia, and she said, Lisa, I'm 55 years old, and I've never had a sexually transmitted disease, and I have chlamydia. What do you think? And I said, I think you need to confront your boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And that went back and forth probably for about 2-3 weeks before he fessed up to something that wasn't quite sex, and he really didn't mean it, and he was drunk, and she should get over it. And she did. She said, well, he made a mistake, and people do make mistakes, which is another thing that an empath does, is they believe in the best, and they are quick to forgive, sometimes at their own sacrifice.
Yeah, and let me tell you, yes, I went through a period of feeling like, oh my gosh, this was the most powerful. I think that's where we get caught off guard, is because it does feel like it's the most powerful, close, connected relationship you've ever had. It's the best everything. But you do go through healing around that, and you do have close, connected, real, reality-based relationships that are come from your heart, not from Fantasy Island. And you see the big difference between, I kind of look at it like how you feel about God, and God's love for you is completely unconditional. Like there's no relationship that you're going to have that's closer than that. And you can have that kind of relationship and that feeling of warmth and surety and safety in a healthy relationship with another healthy human being. The bedazzle that you get with someone who's very narcissistic is coming from you, the empath. It's also coming from the narcissist. And even though it feels so amazing, it'll never compare to the real stuff that happens in those truly loving, healthy relationships.
Well, and I think that speaking to that, coming back to that question, does this relationship make me a better person? Not because he's the CEO of IBM. Does he make me a better person because he believes in me? And when I spend time with him, we have like-mindedness, we're energized, he brings out the best qualities, he holds space for my weaknesses. So love brings out the best in us. Love doesn't bring out the worst in us.
Right.
And so, true love versus intoxicating love, or the helpy love, right? And it's hard, I say run, don't walk from the wow factor. That's
Yes.
a good indication that you've smelled a narcissist.
Yes, and you do get to a point where they're just not even attractive anymore, and you're not attracted to them. And guess what? The more you work on your boundaries and the more you work on your self-worth and your self-care and all those things, the less attractive you are to them. Like they'll come in because they're always going to come into your life. They'll come into my life and, because they'll come into anybody's life. But I'm so boring and not a tasty meal anymore, where I used to be like exotic chocolate. They leave, like they go away because
you're not fun. They can't play with you. Yeah, they can't. They will. It's a
little bit, but I'm gonna get John and be like, and then I know all the steps to do to get rid of them. As soon as I figure it out, I'm like, boom, gotcha, I'm out.
Boom. Yeah.
And they leave.
If you're not impressed with them, it's over, right? So, yeah, as soon as, and if you're not going to jump on any opportunity to talk or be with them, it's over. And I think that's so important. I think that's so helpful to point out, though, Kristin, because I really do, I see serial codependence is what I call it. And it's typically with whether it's a highly sensitive individual or a highly sensitive individual who's also an empath. They find that they're same song, different day, that they're finding themselves with that same character. And the beauty of boundaries, and I know you and I have done a podcast on boundaries, or a couple of them, the beauty of boundaries is it creates the foundation to being me without losing you. Yes. And that there really are people who love and respect you for who you are, not for what you do for them. And so, for those people who have taken the position of, I'm not going to be in a relationship, I just invite them to explore and implement healthy boundaries.
And to really work on having that amazing relationship with yourself. The person you deserve to fall in love with more than anything else ever, other than God, is you. So when you are filled with your own cup and you feel really good about yourself, and you have had your field day with these very manipulative, toxic types, you're not desperate for their attention. So they don't have the twinkle in their teeth that they used to, because you're not desperate, because you fill your own cup.
Well, truly. And I think that's one of the blessings that you talked about earlier, of finding yourself in one of these relationships and working through it. Because I don't know about you, Kristin, but when I was a young girl, my mother used to say, well, no one can love you, sweetheart, unless you love yourself. And I remember walking into the bathroom, 15 pounds overweight with poor complexion, thinking, oh God, this is hopeless. This is never going to happen, right? And it's only when we find ourselves in relationships that don't work that we begin to develop boundaries. We begin to focus on self-care, which then it sets the platform for self-love, which then enables us to enter into loving, mutually respectful relationships. So it's not all bleak and doom. Many of us have to walk through these challenges in order to have that type of growth and have develop that level of self-love.
Absolutely. I would never be able to run Mental Health News Radio Network if I had not had extreme narcissists in my life, because being a media company that does advocacy can look really shiny and really spectacular, especially media. What attracts more narcissists than that? So boy, I have slayed so many of those dragons that I'm just like, yep, I smell it coming.
It's a Dalmatian, or I think of the Jaws. Dun, they're coming in. Yeah,
and I don't get bedazzled by people because I trust myself. I love myself. I know that there are other people. I have other people in my life. I'm surrounded by extremely loving, healthy people who worked hard to have those relationships. So there's not somebody that's going to come in and sweep me off my feet. I don't need somebody to do that. I sweep myself off my own feet.
Isn't that beautiful? Mm-hmm. That is fantastic. And then that's what is at the, what is it, the light at the end of the tunnel, or smelling the barn, or, that we really do come to a place of increased freedom. And I guess we really come full circle in that, we were talking at the beginning of the show that the truth shall set you free.
Yes.
And, when we come to a place of knowing that truth and honoring that truth in all that we do, and not from a selfish perspective, but from a steward perspective, my operating system, then we have the freedom to be me. I'm free to be me. And I can risk losing you. I'm okay with that.
That's right. Exactly. Well, this is fantastic. We just talked about with Dr. Lisa Day from meierclinics.com, MEIER, clinics.com, about empaths and the role of boundaries in toxic relationships. So Dr. Lisa Day, again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristin. It's always so wonderful to do shows with you.
And thanks to our listening family. We've got so many great shows planned for you. Can't wait to air them. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.